Someirege Forensic Science International. Then yatugamba nti bw'okwexamining a test item n'osanga mu compound emu tikiri kyangu kuzuula nti emundu ekateerwa. Then bw'okusanga nti alimu compound ibiri, ekyo kikuyambawo okumanya nti emundu ekateerwa. Then yatugamba nti bw'okulola M3 akasanga compound ibiri, akasanga NG na DPA, nti alo chances z'amaanyi kulola nti emundu ekateerwa. Then yatugamba bw'okulola M1 and M3 nti ezo bw'oziteeranyiza zikuba zina compound isatu. Ezo nizo NDPA egeri M1 na compound ibiri eziri mu M2. Then yatugamba bw'okulola a compound ezo zoona eziri mu M1 na mu M3 okusanga nti ziri isatu, kandi tokusobola kuba otalinamu kuniira nti emundu etateerwa. That's what I was saying.
I want you to again relate with the Osaka paper, if you can go out to the last again. Now, you remember you were severally asked about the detection and presence of nitrosols in relation to the definitions of double base, single base, triple base, and smokeless powder. Now, in all the three criteria of gunshot residue interpretation you have demonstrated to court is the presence of nitrocellulose, the requirement for conclusive interpretation of the presence of gunshot residue.
First criteria, which I gave for
what is the answer? If you can tell us what it is, then you can explain. Is it's present in this?
The presence of nitrocellulos is not necessary for confirmation of the presence of gunshot residue.
Why?
I've demonstrated to court using three criteria: the confirmation, presence of, like I said, for the confirmation of presence of gunshot residues. The first criteria I informed the court that it required the presence of compounds indicated as components of gunshot residue, and that the presence requires the presence of compounds indicated as components of gunshot residue. And that the presence of DPA must be confirmed by the presence of one of its derivatives. And that criteria, like cellulose, is not required to be demonstrated to be present. The confirmation of gunshot residue. In the second criteria, it is described in a scientific article by Mangelini and others. It talks about the presence of two or more compounds on the same subject as an indication of evidence strong enough for the confirmation of gunshot residues of firearm origin. In that criterion, it's not necessary to demonstrate the presence of nitrocellulose. The third approach, which is demonstrated using the Osaka standard, divides the relevant compounds into two categories. And it gives two criteria for the indication for presence of gunshot residue of firearm origin and under none of the two criteria does it specify the need to demonstrate the presence of nitrocellulose.
Still staying in the Osaka paper, you were taken to clause 9 to clause 8. Which is on page 4. And that's it about the preservation of the sample. You told the court that you had no knowledge of the handling of the sample prior to receiving them. I want you to clarify to court in what state did you receive the samples that you examined?
My Lord, yes, I have said I received the samples in sealed tamper-proof plastic bags.
In
Sealed tamper-proof plastic bags.
Now, counsel asked you whether you swabbed yourself prior to doing the analysis, and you said no. Why?
It is standard practice that when we are going to process the samples, the work surfaces are cleaned, and we, the examiners, wear protective gear, and use the right tools to handle destinations. Under no circumstance do I, as the examiner, touch these items. So standard practice would be that the person who touches these items, like the one who prepares the pieces of clothing that are sent to us, provides swabbing of their hands and work surfaces to be tested as controls.
Just go to your report briefly again.
atutwaire alupapula peegi ya 4 layini y'omukaaga. Peegi ebyo emazawo engeri y'okwatamu samples. Then yatugamba akaba talina magezi, atalinawo amagezi okwata samples zino atakazifunire. Then yatugamba akatunga samples zino ziri mu plastic bags kandi zisiringirwe. Yatugamba atakebere wenka kyonka balina emiringo gye bawondeire. Then yatugamba ekichweka bwani bagenda obikebera ekichweka bakiyonja bulungi then nibajwala ebikwetagisibwa kandi nibakozesa ebikwetagisibwa ku testinga ebikuba bibaleeteibwa.
Doctor, you remember you were asked about the substances detected on Exhibit D5, the muzzle of the gun. You were asked whether the exact components on that Exhibit D5 were detected on the rest of the test items. It was imputed that the gun, being the donor of the gunshot components, the exact components on the gun should have been detected on the rest of the test items relating to the firing activity. You responded that not all the three components you detected on Exhibit D5 were detected on all the other test items. I want you to clarify what must all the three detected items on Exhibit D5 be collected? Must they collectively appear on each of the other test items for a positive gunshot residue result?
Deposition of gunshot residues when a firearm is discharged the deposition of gunshot residues when a firearm is discharged random and uneven. The detection of components on any test item is dependent on how sampling or swabbing was done, and therefore you do not expect to find exact compounds on all test items even if they relate to the same scene.
What is because
Again,
I need to be seen, and I look at it and see
no, my gunshot residue. For gunpowder, if you pour out a blade, you can see the powder. But for gunshot residue, you cannot see it, unless it is in very excessive amount. I have not seen it personally, unless you're using visual aids like microscopes to see, but still it has to be enhanced visualization. But by enhanced, I mean you have to add something that forms a color to imply to be seen. That's why we use advanced techniques that help us to see and detect these substances better.
I don't think was that in relation to when he says even if they relate to the same scene.
I was asking about gunshot recipe from the muscle, not all the components being present on the items that are being tested. I was trying to look to amounts. So, how is it that some items, some components will be detected and others will not be detected from the same shooting
Yes,
episode?
yes, and that's what I say. It's random. That you cannot determine where they're going to land. If I was shooting from here and they landed here, I cannot be sure that I've swabbed the entire surface of this place. So I could swab in one place where they don't land. And that will turn out to be not detected. If I am lucky and I swabbed where I had enough swabs, then I could detect one component in one swab, because that's where the component landed. Then I could detect another component in another swab. That's what I mean. It's random and uneven. But you cannot find that it all goes, that all the components go and land on one surface, and then it's the swab you find it.
What is that clear?
Okay, so I want to just briefly take you to two more
Issues that arose, and then I close. You were asked about the format of your report, and then you said that you use a template for your report. I just wanted you to be clear about what you mean when you say you use a template.
My lord, the template refers to standard form that guides what should be included when we are documenting our findings. So after our analysis of the data, we, the examiners, populate these templates and add information
By operating
by filling the template and add information that pertains to the case and that examination.
So that means, therefore, that when you use a template, it is a copy and paste process as put to you by the council.
No matter, it's not a content process.
Finally, council said you as to between your testimony in chief and your report as to which one ought to take. And you said that court should take your report. So I want you to clarify.
And it is very categorical. So what is there to clarify?
But I've not even asked the question.
You don't even go there and fight. Yes.
Someone was asking this.
Yeah, my God. So, I want you to clarify to court how you want court to take your testimony in court.
My lords, been in court, I have realized that my report is too technical. That couldn't be understood by court without my presence. A prayer therefore is that
So you have realized that?
my report is too technical.
Don't register how you want.
That's
I'm building a metaphor.
what is the technical?
For me, I have been in court. From the time I've been in court, I've realized that
My report is too technical to be understood in my absence. My prayer therefore is for courts to consider both my testimony and my report.
Lord, that's not from us.
My Lord, it's clear. I want to understand that after our consideration, there is no further hearing.
My Lord, we also hope that the cross-examination is strictly
on the matters that came out,
matters in relation to paragraph,
the prayer you
the prayer.
Yes, the prayer you yes. Introduce a new matter. Paragraph 10. That's paragraph 10. That's where the new matter is. Paragraph 10. On the identification, that's a determination.
My Lord, I think the witness has himself said that his report was too technical. He keeps changing it. But I promise to limit myself as much as possible.
He didn't say it keeps changing.
Okay. My Lord, that was my understanding. But my Lord, with your indulgence and for the record, my name is Ellison Karahanda. You have your study?
Yes, I have. You have it.
Actually, your standard practice.
I have this document.
Yes. Do you agree? Do you now agree that this is an authoritative document?
I agree that you can use finances to kind of represent.
Answer my
No,
question.
is it authoritative? Do you agree that it is authoritative or not?
But maybe it should be broken down for me.
My Lord, I want to retain my question. Do you agree now that this is an authoritative document?
And my Lord, we want to humbly object. This cross-examination was granted not on the entire document, because the document has several other aspects.
We agree that we are not going to go into your examination of the
Exactly.
entire document.
My Lord, this is specific on page 7. So if probably you can ask about page 7.
No, my Lord, I am laying a background. I'm laying a background. There is this question includes that page. Do you agree? Do you now agree that this document is authoritative? My Lord, I object to my Lord, I need protection.
My Lord, there is a
I need
reason.
protection.
Mr. Morgan, let him finish his question, then he will ask yours.
My Lord.
Let him finish asking his question, then he will ask
Okay.
yours.
My Lord, you ask a question?
No, he was responding to what you answered, but you hadn't finished asking.
No, my Lord, I was
Yes.
just asking a simple question.
Yes, what are you asking?
Does the witness now accept that this document is authoritative?
And my Lord, I am
And I
objecting
think,
to
no,
that
no.
question.
My Lord,
No, but what is the objection?
my Lord,
Because-
Islam is to object to all my
No,
questions.
no, just,
No.
let me understand the basis of the objection.
Thank you, my Lord.
You have used
Thank you,
10,
my Lord.
you have used 10,
Yes.
paragraph 10,
Yes, my Lord.
to do re-examination
Yes, ma'am.
on any matter.
Yes, my Lord.
Yes.
Yes, my
And,
Lord.
and now the witness is being asked in cross-examination whether, the witness seemed to in his testimony, agree with
Paragraph 10.
with paragraph 10 in this document.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Now, the question that is being asked is on the entire document. My Lord,
We canvass what? Paragraph
we
10.
canvass paragraph 10, and that is where leave was granted for cross-examination. So,
Mr. Karuhanga,
Mr. Karuhanga
let him
open.
let him ask about this particular
My Lord,
paragraph 10.
my Lord, I pray
Because
for.
that is
My Lord, my Lord, I want
I
to.
can just justify why.
My Lord, I want to make a prayer for protection and fairness. My Lord, we are doing cross-examination. Cross-examination is a statutory exercise governed under section 154. I am allowed to ask this man questions that test his veracity. You have limited me, my Lord, to ask him questions about a new matter he introduced about a document.
Yes, but the new
It is
matter
fair
is
enough
specific
background
on
to ask
number,
him.
on item 10.
Yes, and my Lord, it is fair to ask him if the document is authoritative. That's my question. I will then go to item number 10. I don't understand why Mr. Morgan is scared of that answer. This court already held that it wants the truth. Is it the truth that this is an authoritative document? There's no need to cover that up.
My Lord, may I justify why I am raising this objection?
Let's hear it. What is the basis of your objection?
My Lord, when we attempted to go slightly, even within the same paragraph, but to other sub-paragraphs, there was a vehement objection that we were going beyond the specifics.
But what are the rules of cross-examination?
My Lord, I'll come to that if, with your leverage, my Lord. Now, my Lord, in re-examination, we had so much to say about other contents of this document. We could not be allowed because those would be new matters. We made a specific prayer, my Lord, to allow a new matter only on paragraph 10. My Lord, in subsection 3 of section 136 of the Evidence Act, of 137, the cross-examination is a limited aspect, my Lord, only in respect to a new matter. So now, it is only the other first cross-examination where you can ask everything. Now, that leverage, my Lord, is not there. This is specific, and leave was specifically granted. So counsel cannot open cross-examination on the entire document that we've never traversed.
My Lord, I'm not cross-examining on the entire document.
No, but the question, because when it comes to cross-examination, when you ask me a question, it must be limited to paragraph 10.
Yes.
It's an analysis. So you change your question to, do you agree that this section
Okay, do you agree that paragraph 10 is part of an authoritative document?
It's part of an authoritative document.
You took this quote to paragraphs 10.2 and 10.3, right?
Yes, I did.
I want you to look at paragraph 10.2.1.
10.2.1.
Yes.
Yes.
Read it.
Paragraph 10.2.1, my lords, is under 10.2, which talks about classification. It reads, the significancy of compounds identified in table 2 is based on their observed association with organic residues and with other environmental sources unrelated to organic residue. The classification scheme, table 3, is proposed based on review of relevant literature.
So, is it correct to say that this classification scheme is based on a review of relevant literature?
Yes, that's true.
And I take it that would be peer-reviewed and authoritative literature, right?
Peer-reviewed literature.
What does peer reviewing mean? Does it make it authoritative?
Peer review means it has been gone by experts within the field.
So does it become authoritative by that?
Right. It could become, it could be an opinion of a few experts that could be not taken up by other experts. It depends on the jurisdiction. If the committee is instituted by in the US, then it becomes authoritative in the US. If a committee is instituted by experts within Africa, Uganda, then it becomes an authority within that area.
So like your study is only an authority in Uganda? The one you presented, for example. The Amuru one.
Our study was published by Journal in Uganda. So it has been peer-reviewed by other experts beyond the boundaries of Uganda.
So my last question was, does peer review mean that it is reviewed by other scientists and therefore it's authoritative?
Yes.
Can you confirm that there are footnotes 19, 20, and 21?
There are footnotes?
19, 20, and 21.
They are not footnotes, they are references.
There are references, reference 19,
Right.
20, and 21.
References, yes.
Let's confirm to this court what reference number 20 is. Which is at page 10.
Reference 20 is Manganelli.
Manganelli.
Is survey of organic gunshot residue prevalence, comparison between civilian and police populations, Forensic Science International, 2019, pages 28-57. Theodore is given there.
Can you confirm that that's the study that this court has?
That's the study that this book has, my lord.
Okay, thank you. And you had said you contest that study.
I did not contest that study.
Okay, thank you. Now, you also, let me move to where you went. You took this code to 10.3.1. Let's start at 10.3.1.
Mean page 7, the last part.
Yes. Thanks. That's the last point in paragraph 1 on page 7. Read it.
10.3, which reads analytical conclusions. 10.3.
Analytical conclusions.
10.3.1. Based on the classification scheme for compounds identified table 3.
Continue. Based on the classification scheme for compounds identified in table 3.
Minimum criteria to report organic gunshot residues has been identified.
So there is a minimum criteria, right?
Let us read it here. There is a minimum criteria for identification of conditions.
And if it doesn't meet that criteria, you cannot report it as organic gunshot residue, right?
That is true.
Anyone else you can translate?
Twayege exhibit D5 egebayirege muzzle of the gun omunwa tali ekisasi liraba hamuni. Then yatugamba ti ekisasi bwe liba liteirwe ebirugamu bisaasaanyizibwa tosaabisanga mu kiweka kimu. Yatugamba okusaba kufuna components ezo kusigikira engeri babisoloize kitibabisoloza mu kiweka kimu. Then yatuwa meaning ya template, yatugamba ene form etuyambawo kumanya ebyo ojja kuteeka mu document ebyofunire. Then yatugamba akaire katwaire ali mu kooti asangire nti ripooti yahandikire eri yamaanyi muno kandi tukusaa kugyetegereza watalo. Let's go.
Okay. So, now just confirm, because you have told us about 3 criteria. Just confirm that the OSAC criteria includes the Manganelli criteria, based on what you just read for us.
The OSAC criteria references the Manganelli criteria.
What is the difference between including and referencing?
I know you can only understand it if I read for you this one and then the other one.
Why don't you this answer?
I don't understand because he asked this question. And he asked,
Whether it
does it
incorporates-
include, and then you said it references. So let's have the difference so that people can understand.
So my Lord, what I read was, that is 10.2.1, right? The significance of compounds identified is based on their observed association with oral LPS and with other environmental sources unrelated to OGRIs. A classification scheme, table 3, is proposed based on a review of relevant literature, and they give 3 citations, including number 20, which is the Manganelli language.
So how is it different in this context?
I don't
You use the word referencing and including.
Yes, my Lord. When I read a scientific paper, I don't just read it. I read it, internalize it, understand it, and derive how I'm going to use study. So I could cite your paper and pick how to apply your study. I don't only adopt what you give me, and that's the basis of science. If you make a study, we evaluate the study, we see what can be translated from the study for the good of science. Not that we pick everything in your publication and justify it. That's why I say it cites it.
Okay, would I be correct to say it cites it as an authority?
It cites it.
As an authority?
It cites it.
Okay. You're not sure if it's cited as an authority or not?
Cites it.
Please answer my question.
It cites it. I don't know what you mean by an authority.
So you don't know what I mean by an authority. That's okay.
No,
Don't try to answer my question. You don't know what I mean? You don't know what I mean? I move.
You wanted to know whether it is cited as an authority.
And he doesn't know what I mean.
In what context?
I know it cites it here as the basis for classification scheme derived under the OSAC standard.
So that's the answer. The OSAC
Standards
the OSAC standard
cites
the
the
Manganelli
study
As the basis.
study
as they use the Manganelli study to derive a classification scheme.
to derive
A classification scheme. Which they propose
Which they propose
for the interpretation of organic gunshot residue.
Can I continue? So let's go to 10.3.1.
Yes, 10.3.1 I'm there.
It says that at least 2 category 1 compounds,
8.3 points.
10.3.1.1 on page 8.
Yes.
Read it to court.
At least 2 category 1 compounds
At least 2 category 1 compounds,
with or without category 2 compounds.
with or without,
Category 2 compounds.
yes,
The residue is characteristic of OGRS.
OGSR.
OGSR.
So now, let's understand this simply. If you find 2 compounds which are in category 1,
1.
which category 1 is at page 7.
Yes. Page is category 1, page 7.
You find 2 compounds with a category 1, that is characteristic of gunshot residue.
That's characteristic of organic residue.
If you find two compounds together with another, if you find two compounds from category 1 together with another compound from category 2, that would be a total of 3 compounds, right?
Yes, that is 3 compounds. 2 category 1 compounds
And 1 category 2.
and 1 category 2 compounds. Those would be 3 compounds.
Those would be 3 compounds. And if you found 3 compounds, the residue is characteristic.
Compounds of.
No, my question. If you found 2 category
Let's go back where you started. You
No,
said if
please
you find
answer my
2
question.
category.
My lord, I don't want this man to start asking me
I see
questions.
how well answer.
Answer, you have to answer.
I want to answer the question. What I want to understand.
So he has.
Yeah, so don't
please.
prevaricate. Answer.
No, Mr. Kalpan. Ask your question again. Let you understand it.
So my question, I'm going to ask my question again. Please listen to what I ask and answer what I ask. And do not ask questions back. The question is, if you find 2 category 1 compounds and 1 category 2 compound, that is a total of 3 compounds, right?
Right.
And if you find those 3 compounds I just asked you about, that is characteristic of organic and short residue, right?
Right.
Thank you. Now, can you confirm that in the samples M3 and M1 that you referred to, none of them, reviewed on their own, meet this definition?
None of them.
Neither M1 nor M3.
Just a minute.
Look at your report.
So if I review it,
Does M3 have 2 category 1 compounds?
no, it doesn't.
And therefore M3 is not characteristic of OGSR.
M3 does not meet the criteria of OGSR according to the standard.
So M3 doesn't meet the criteria.
According to the first criteria of the standard.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, the standard uses the words characteristic of OGSR, correct?
It uses it.
The next standard uses the word consistent with OGSR.
The next standard.
Yes,
The
10.3.1.2.
next criteria you mean.
10.3.1.2
Yes.
uses the term consistent with OGSR.
That's what it uses.
Does OSAC define those 2 terms?
I am not ready to play, but I can check.
Please check.
So 3.1.2
Yes,
uses the term
consistent. The first one is characteristic. Kindly give us the OSAC definition of characteristic. You'll find it at page 2.
3.1, yes, 33.1.3. Characteristic residues.
But first of all, it is page 2.
Yes.
So before, okay, page 2.
May I read it?
Page 2 of OSAC, my lord.
And I can know it.
Under the term terminology. 3.1.3. Page 2. Kindly read for us the definition of characteristic.
So characteristic are any organic residues that have combination of compounds where they found residues from anything other than smokeless powders.
So characteristic means a combination of compounds rarely found in anything other than smokeless powder, right?
Combination of compounds rarely found residues from anything other than smokeless powders.
Right? That's what it means.
That's what I read.
What about consistent?
So consistent residues and organic residues that have a combination of compounds that can be found in residues from smokeless powders, but also may have other sources.
But also may have other sources. Now, I want you to go back to page 8. You also spoke about a category 1 compound and a category 2 compound, right?
Right?
There's also defined those terms.
Which terms?
Category 1 compound and category 2 compound.
Define these terms.
That definition can still be found on the same page too. Can that definition still be found on the same page too?
Yes, it is there.
Can you define for us a category 1 compound?
I define as listed here, category 1, compounds used to manufacture of smokeless powder or priming compounds and their related liquidation products, which are uncommon in other commercial environmental sources.
And category 2?
Category 2, compounds used to manufacture of smokeless powder or priming compounds and their related liquidation products, which are common in other commercial or environmental sources.
Okay. So we have the terms category 1, category 2, characteristic residue and consistent residue defined.
Correct.
And it is your evidence that M3 is not a characteristic, is not characteristic.
M3 is,
Not characteristic.
and I have to, can you give me time to metaphorize what you're saying? You analyzed when the M3 is consistent.
My question, M3 is not characteristic. I'm coming to consistent next.
It's not characteristic.
Yes, it is not characteristic of gunshot residue. Answer truthfully, answer what you're
Let me
reading.
come to you. Answer.
I'll come to consistent. I promise you. Next.
Yes, that's correct.
So what is correct? M3 is?
Not characteristic.
M3 does not fulfill the criterion listed under 10.3.1.1.
As characteristic of organic gunshot residue, right?
Yes.
The criteria listed under?
Under 10.3.1.1.
As characteristic.
Furthermore, the term consistent with organic gunshot residue. Am I correct to say that term means that it may also have other sources other than organic gunshot residue?
So it may have other sources as well.
Thank you. Can I get a translation? I think the answer was clear.
Yes.
Can I get a translation? Okay. Okay. Now, I want to suggest to you that 10.3.1 and 10.3.1.2 give us what I think you call a minimum criteria, right? Or is it the document that calls it that? It's the document.
10 point, the document gives us minimum criteria.
Because the minimum criteria.
Yes.
The minimum criteria, correct me if I'm wrong, looking at both of them together.
Looking at
Both of them together,
both meaning what?
consistent and characteristic, is that you must find at least two compounds.
If you're looking at 10
Both of them together.
If you're looking at 10.3.1, I read it to what?
No. Answer the question.
But I have to answer when I understand your question.
If you're having a problem with understanding, let me repeat the question.
Please.
The question is, under 10.3.1,
10.3.1, which is on page 7.
must the minimum number of compounds you must have must be 2.
Under 10.3.1
3.1.
under 10.3.1 on page 7, based on the classification scheme for compounds identified separately, minimum criteria to report ODRS has been identified. That's 10.3.1.
My question was, there must be at least 2 compounds.
But you're saying 10.3.1, and I'm reading 10.3.1.
My question is, to confirm characteristic organic gunshot residue,
And
must there be 2 compounds? You're the one answering questions, please.
No, he's asking for clarification, it's fine. So, answer, must there be 2 components of category
1.
1?
yes, that is stated under 10.3.1.1.
There must be 2. Minimum there must be 2.
Must be 2 category 1 compounds, with or without category 2 compounds.
So there must be 2, but they can be 3.
It can be 3.
And for the next one, 10.3.1.2, there must be 2, right?
There must be 2 1 category 1 and at least 1 category 2 compounds.
There must be 2 1.
There must be 2 compounds, 1 in category 1 and 1 in category 2.
So does OSAC explain what happens if you find less than the minimum?
So
If you look at the next one, 10.3.2.
10.3.2, if less than the minimum is identified, each compound identified may be listed, but inconclusive result should be reported. The reason for the inconclusive results shall be included in any conclusive result.
If less, that my note is page 8, paragraph 10.3.2. If less than the minimum is identified, each compound identified may be listed, but an inconclusive result shall be reported. Now let's look at M1. Confirm that M1 has less than the minimum criteria.
My lords, that angle of analysis of
Look at
category
M1.
is erroneous.
Look at M1.
Just a moment. Says that if less than the minimum is identified, each compound identified may be listed, but an
Inconclusive.
inconclusive result
Should.
not shall
Should.
be reported. The shall is on the reason.
Yes. So I want you to go to M1.
My lords, my point is,
Before you get to your point.
this is interpretation.
Before you get to your point, let's first answer my questions. Go to M1. I'm coming to your point
This is
actually.
interpretation.
Dr.
Let's
Chisitu.
go to M1.
Don't
But that
just-
is what it says.
Yes, I'm coming to that. Dr.
That's
Chisitu, don't worry.
interpretation, my lords.
Dr. Chisitu,
Just a moment.
don't worry. I'm coming to that. Let's go to M1.
Yes, I'm at M1.
Does M1 have 2 category 1 compounds?
M1 has 1 category 1 compound.
Does it have any category 2 compound?
It doesn't have any category 2 compound.
It is fair to say that M1 is less than the minimum.
My lords, this refers to interpretation.
Answer my
Which I
question.
don't.
I first answer.
My lords,
Answer
it's
my
better you
question.
understand what I mean by interpretation.
No, before we understand what you mean.
Better you understand what I mean by interpretation.
Lord, may the witness be allowed to answer.
My Lord is here to answer questions.
Yes, but I answer questions I understand.
Let the witness
My Lord, allow me to
answer.
cross-examine.
Let the
You're
witness-
This is not fair, my Lord. Allow me to
You're
cross-examine.
going to cross-examine, but the answers we write must shed light on the questions that are relevant.
Yes.
If we just write, we shall find ourselves at a gridlock.
So my,
So you're saying that it is
This refers to interpretation
of what?
of results.
what are you
And my
talking about?
point is, if you painted for me a picture of these test items, I could interpret them for you. But I report here, I report seen, not seen, detected, not detected. I do not interpret these results because they are blind samples. Had I known what each of these samples mean, I would interpret it and relate it to this document.
Okay.
But what council is doing for
Okay.
me is pointing out every sample by itself as if they belong to different people, they belong to different scenes. That's erroneous interpretation.
I want to come to that. I want to come to that, my Lord. I want to come to that. But I first want us to do it in the first way. My Lord, my Lord, my Lord, I want us to do it the first way.
I know that
I want-
is
no,
not
no, no, no.
interpretation. That is
No.
interpretation and
No, no,
it's
no, no, no,
erroneous
no.
if you go into that.
No. Let us do, we are going step by step. So step one, we are going to do exactly that. We are going to go with blind samples, then we are going to connect.
Yes.
So let's start with blind samples. Would you agree with me that as a blind sample, M1 does not meet the minimum criteria for you to report gunshot residue?
M1 has one category 1 compound.
And therefore it does not meet the minimum criteria. Be honest.
True?
M1 has one category,
One compound.
and it has no category two compound, so it,
By the way, we are on 10.3.1.1.
so that is M1.
That's M1.
So it does not meet the minimum criteria as a blind sample.
Itself,
As
yes.
a blind sample.
Yes. By itself.
Now I want us to go to and if you find nothing,
If I find nothing, I'm
what does
supposed
COSAC say? 10.3.4.
Yes, if I find nothing, I'm supposed to give an interpretation of my results.
10.3.4.
That's what it is. 10.3.4.
Read it.
Additional reporting criteria.
No, 10.3.3 rather.
Now which one should I read?
10.3.3.
10.3.3, if no OGSR components are detected, a negative result should be reported.
So just like for example at M2,
Target compound not detected.
so you should report a negative result according to
I
this.
reported target compound not detected.
But my question is, according to this, you should report a negative result.
According to this, you should write the negative results.
Thank you. Now, it is your evidence,
Yes.
it is your evidence that you must look at these samples in context, right?
Yes.
Were you asked to look at them in context or were you asked to look at them individually?
My Lord, I was asked to analyze the samples and detect components of GSR because my report is an annex to another report.
Were you asked to look at them in context or to
I
look
have
at
answered
them?
it, my Lord.
Answer my question. Were you
My
asked
report is an annex to another report.
Asked that, were you asked
to look at them in context?
or as a whole?
These samples pertain to the same case. I analyzed them relating to the same case. And if I had been
Can you
given
look at the
chance to
request? Can you look at the request?
My Lord, can the witness complete before?
And
We cannot be halfway and another question is flying.
These samples were submitted with the same reference. And I was requested to conduct an analysis for gunshot residue analysis.
Okay, can you look at the actual
I'm
request?
still answering.
No. I think
I'm
you've
still
answered.
answering.
I know, I think he has
You were
answered.
asked to
conduct.
An analysis for gunshot residue.
And my
So
report.
can you take us to that where they asked
And
you?
my report.
No, before you reach your report.
And my
No,
report
no.
was part of an annex.
My Lord, allow me to
another
control
Your
report.
report was?
My report is an annex to another report where this interpretation should have been given.
No, you did not provide the other report.
Which report? My report was an annex to another
Did you
report.
provide the other report to this
Which
report?
report?
The one you're talking
My
about.
report. My report.
My Lord,
is an
let
annex
this
to the
witness
ballistics
talk
report.
about his report. Can you go to the request that was sent to you? Don't talk about other people's reports.
Yes.
Go to the request.
You're leading into the request. Yes.
My Lord, we do object to that because it never arose during re-examination. And we would request that our colleagues,
My Lord,
and
you
Mr.
made-
Karuhanga restricts himself to only the part and the order of
my Lord, it's a reason for the
Right
answer
now,
is
what
given.
is happening is he wants to get excited and go everywhere. He needs to know his limits.
My Lord,
We are
I need
not
to be
going to
protected.
go
Use your
through.
last language.
Yeah,
My Lord,
we are not going to
My
open
Lord.
cross-examination.
my Lord, I've been the victim of a lot of insults.
No, my lord.
No, but to be very honest, both sides have used unpalatable language.
But I'm the
So you
biggest victim.
cannot say that the prosecution, both of you have been using language which is unpalatable. Both sides. So restrain yourselves, and as she's made a point, the cross-examination is supposed to be on number 10.
Yes, my Lord, the witness is connecting. He is, because I've asked him to just analyze his results, and he's connecting something based on a request he received. So it's only fair that this
I must
court
look at this
look at the request.
These samples were submitted with the same reference, and I requested to conduct an analysis for this.
So let us look at the request. Look at the request.
These samples, I must look at these samples in context. These samples were submitted with the same reference, and I was requested to conduct an analysis.
Okay.
Yes.
So can you go to the request?
Don't go back to part 10.
What about the request?
Don't go back to part 10.
So we leave the request, my Lord?
Let's leave the request.
Okay.
Go back to part 10.
Okay. Okay. So we go back to part 10. It is your evidence, for example, that you must look at these results in a context that you did not look at them in, right?
It is my evidence that if I am to interpret these results, I should not interpret them in isolation.
So is it your evidence that before this court there is no interpretation of the results?
My report replies to the analysis request that was
Answer
given to
my
me.
question.
What's your
Is
question?
it your evidence that before this
If I am
court,
to interpret the results, I must do what?
If I to interpret the results, my lord, if I to give an interpretation of the results rather than reporting the compounds seen, and I will give an interpretation of what the meaning of the results is.
is it your evidence that before this court there is no interpretation of your results?
I must look at the
Answer my
context
question,
I-
yes or no. Is there an
Collectively
interpretation?
and not in
The
isolation.
witness is in the middle of completing an
If I
answer.
am to interpret the results, I must.
I must look at all test items collectively, not in isolation, and that's what is going through to me.
You must look at
All test items collectively and not in isolation.
So, is it your evidence that there is no interpretation of these results in your report before this court?
In my report, my lord,
Please answer me yes or no. I have not asked you a long question. It's a simple and straightforward question.
in my
Is there an
report, my lord,
interpretation
in
of the
my
results?
report, in my report, my lord, I give the compounds as seeing the different test items.
Do you interpret the results?
The interpretation of the results is why I'm in court, my lord.
Do you interpret the
I
results?
give a conclusion of my findings.
Dr. Chisiki.
In your report, you give what?
My lord, in my report, I give, in table 3, I give my findings per test item.
You give your findings per item.
Per test item.
In table
In table 3,
3, test item.
yes. I go ahead under paragraph 5, analysis summary.
No, my lord is now moving
No.
before my questions. I want us to move together instead.
We have asked the question about
My question is,
Yeah.
finding
Yes.
interpretation.
And
You said you've given your findings.
I give my findings
And
under
then-
table 3, and that is test item by test item.
Test item,
Yes, and then I give a general conclusion under paragraph 5 analysis summary.
So is that the interpretation?
The interpretation of my finding would mean, my lord,
no.
that you tell
First
me
tell us
these
if it is.
test items are connected like this. What I report here is that components of gunshot residues have been identified in the test items.
Dr. Chisitu,
Yes,
are you able to answer a straightforward question?
I am
with a
very able to
straightforward
answer a very straightforward question in a straightforward way.
So the straightforward question, does your report contain an interpretation of the results? The answer is either it does or it does not.
My
Be
report,
straightforward.
my report contains a conclusion of what pertains to what I detected.
Does your report contain an interpretation of your results?
What your report contains?
A conclusion under paragraph 5
A conclusion of your findings.
of my
But
findings.
what is the difference between conclusion and interpretation?
My lord, that is the conclusion of your findings.
My lord,
No, let me ask that question. Is the conclusion of your findings the same thing as an interpretation of your findings?
an interpretation will be a detailed analysis of all the samples.
So the
analyzed.
conclusion is not the interpretation.
A conclusion is part of an interpretation, which interpretation requires more knowledge than conclusion to this report, my lord.
And your report has less knowledge.
My lord, my point is, if I had known, I told what in the beginning of the session, that we receive requests in two options. We receive requests via gateway where the test items are described and they are known to us. We write a report, give findings, and interpret those findings.
I know that's an answer to the
In
question.
this request, which is an internal request, receive test items as blind samples, we report on compound C and give a conclusion, of which a conclusion will be part of an interpretation. An interpretation requires a detailed understanding of the circumstances of the case.
And my question was simple. Is that detailed understanding contained in your report? It's a straightforward question, and I'm telling you to just give us a straightforward answer.
Is that detailed explanation contained there?
It's not contained
So
there.
why isn't it contained?
Because I do
No,
not
let's
know
first
what
take that it's
the
not
test
contained.
items
No,
contain.
let us, no.
And
You
you
tell
don't
us,
know, yes.
first, it is not, the
The
report.
detailed interpretation is not contained in my report because
Interpretation is not contained
in my report because
in my report. Now, court wants to know
yes,
why.
yes, my lord, I'm coming to that. If I was to give a detailed interpretation of this test, the results of these test substances, I would need to know or have information about these test items. But since I received them as blind samples, I cannot give a detailed interpretation to relate the samples the components detected.
For you, what? So your conclusion has what?
My conclusion has what is contained in table 3, and I report that components of gunshot residue are detected in the test items submitted for analysis.
So first of all, is it correct to say that this is an incomplete report?
My lord, would you object?
But just a moment, I'm still writing. My conclusion has what is found in table.
My conclusion
Which
gives a
reports-
summary of what I find, what I report in table 3, and it says,
Has what is found in table.
and it states,
Reports components.
components of gunshot residues were detected in test items submitted for analysis.
And you do not interpret whether it is consistent, characteristic, below the minimum requirement, or negative, because you have received only blind samples, right?
If I had received information conclusive about the samples, I would go to that level of detail.
So let's get a level of detail you go to.
Yes.
There is no conclusion in your report about what is consistent, characteristic,
My lord,
what is conclusive. My question, I'm still finishing. There is no conclusion in your report about what is consistent, what is characteristic, what is inconclusive, and what is negative, only because you received blind samples, right?
my lord, to get to that level of detail,
Answer my question.
I would need to know this, where the sources of these test items come from.
Why aren't you
And I
able
will
to
commit
answer a
myself to
straightforward
interpret the
question?
data at that level of detail.
Again,
I would need to know the sources where this test item pertain to get to that level of
The court is
detail.
going to be required to make a decision on this issue. The court must be comfortable, because if I don't understand,
okay, so let me ask my question again, my lord.
let him write, let him give court the information, that will help court.
My lord, can you answer my question? The problem, my lord,
But
is,
some of these scientific things may not have a yes or no answer.
but it has. Let's first agree. Does it have a yes or no answer?
My lord, that is being tricky, really. That is being
My
tricky.
conclusion.
And my lord, are we still on page 7?
Yes.
This periphery of the exam and the extent to which it is going, we are opening the entire case, my lord. Is he still asking about this?
Yes.
How is that question related to this?
I think it is the M3.
My lord, I have asked the witness about whether he says he doesn't have interpretation, and I have said, because we received blind samples, using these criteria, he cannot confirm if something is characteristic, consistent, inconclusive, or negative. That is from page 7, page 8. Keep up. So, now that you don't have that level of you agree you do not have that level of detail in your report, right?
In my reports,
Do you have that level of detail?
that level of detail whereby they describe to me every sample is not given to me because I received
Thank
blind
you.
samples.
So you do not have it.
So the level of detail
Required.
that would have required
Yes.
the witness
Yes.
to touch on characteristics,
Characteristic,
inconclusive, negative, or
Or consistent.
Or inconsistent. Or
Consistent. Or consistent.
characteristic, consistent.
And that level of detail is what you call interpretation of results.
That is the detailed interpretation of results.
Now, I want you to read for this court 10.4.4. 10.4.4. Regarding gunshot residue.
So that's under limitations, 10.4 limitations,
Read. Yes.
10.4.4, 10.4.4.
Read.
Organic gunshot residue identified on one or both hands of a person sampled cannot be used to infer if one or the other hand held a firearm or was used to fire a firearm.
Organic gunshot residue identified on one or both hands of a person sampled cannot be used to infer if one or the other hand held or was used to fire a firearm, right?
That's what is written here.
And it's correct.
It's written in a SAC standard, my lord.
Okay. Page 8. Now, I want us to understand that we can understand the whole sentence, but I just want to understand the first half. According to the first half, it is therefore possible to identify samples on one hand or both hands. Right?
Come again.
According to that, it is possible to identify OGSR on one hand or on both hands, right?
OGS are identified on one hand or both hands of the person sampled.
So it's possible to identify.
That's
It's
identify
possible
what?
to identify OGSR on one hand or on both hands.
Maybe you can complete it for me. I don't get it.
He's asking whether it's possible, assuming I have fired the fire, I would say that I fired the fire. Is it possible to identify the resident on one hand or on both hands?
It's possible that it can be identified on both hands. It's possible that it can be identified in one hand.
Thank you. So each hand should be treated as a separate sample.
That's not what it says.
Is there anywhere that says you should treat two hands as one sample?
And so I thought about this one.
Answer my question.
Answer. What do you say what we spoke about?
Okay, what is the question? Maybe.
My lord, how do we write the first question? When there is no room for writing. I have, my lord, respectfully requested my colleague.
Just ask whether according, the first question was according to OSAP, is it possible to identify OGSR on one hand or on both hands? That one we got.
Yes.
Now the next question was?
Yeah, but it's
So
possible.
both hands.
Before they should finish
He
writing.
shot another one. And my lord, I had requested, Mr. Kamwanga is not writing. For us, we are interested in writing. And we are part of this trial. Can we have delivery? Be allowed to write.
Slow down, allow, no, they need to write that. It's not a tactic. They need to write what everything that we
Anyway, my lord, my question, you have my question. Of course, the tactic has helped you got enough time to process. Now, the question is this. OGSR,
No, Mr. Kalama.
I withdraw.
Please withdraw.
I withdraw. I withdraw.
Ask your question and allow the witness time to answer so that we can report.
Okay. So both hands must be treated, can be sampled differently.
Be sampled. Both hands can be sampled.
Okay, so he has answered. And each sample has to be analyzed.
And each sample has to be analyzed.
You know that there is nowhere in OSAP which tells you to analyze two samples from the hands and interpret those results together.
My lord, I object to that. The cross-examination is on page
8.
8, not the entire OSA. Maybe he wants to rephrase that question on the page.
Okay.
Within
Within that paragraph, within that paragraph 10, within paragraph 10 on data analysis, the whole of paragraph 10, within paragraph 10 on data analysis,
Maybe is there anywhere in paragraph 10
that tells you to analyze samples of two hands together. Yes. Is there anywhere in
Number
paragraph
10
10?
is on data analysis. So
Yes.
he's asking
Yes.
that in paragraph 10, is there anything that says that you can analyze two samples together?
Analyze.
Analyze
Two samples together.
together. Or aggregate the results.
Yes.
Analyzing.
Or aggregate the results.
To aggregate them.
My lord,
Just answer yes or no.
I
It's
will
very short.
only aggregate the results if I am only sample where the samples were picked from. I cannot aggregate results if I don't know where this came from and then where this one came from.
Doctor, that's the question of can you aggregate results?
Aggregate.
Now the question I asked you is, in paragraph 10, is there any paragraph, any clause of paragraph 10
My lord, can we
that
write?
asks
No,
you?
I am
Can
not.
we write?
No, my lord, my question to him was,
What was he saying?
my,
On the aggregate.
what you are saying or what I asked? Because my lord, you should answer what I'm asking him. This
He
business
was
of,
already saying something because I sought clarification. What was, I'm now lost.
my lord, you are saying that,
My lord, I'm not supposed to equal the lost. I don't
yeah, that is very clear. Be careful. Look, my lord, okay, my lord, I withdraw. I withdraw.
We are about to meet the chief whip.
My lord. But
The chief whip, you're overruling the chief whip. The chief whip.
we can appoint my free. But my lord, I think the witness has said that there was no request to him to aggregate all the results.
My lord, that is not even the witness. And this is exactly what happened.
No, no.
We don't want counsel to provide
Okay.
answers, my lord. Let the witness say.
Okay. But my question,
What were you answering?
can I repeat the question?
I'm also losing my notes.
Well, let me rephrase the question.
Flying left, right, and center. I don't know even what to respond.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. Is there anything in paragraph 10 that tells you that you can aggregate results from separate samples?
We paragraph 10. You can aggregate, but you cannot infer.
You can?
Aggregate, but you cannot infer.
Is there?
10.4. 10.4.4.
10.4.4. No, does it say you can aggregate?
OGRS identified in one.
OGSR identified on
One
one
or both hands.
or both hands
Of a person sample.
of a person sample.
Cannot be used to infer.
Cannot be used to
To
infer.
Does that prevent aggregation?
Can it really finish the sentence?
Cannot be used to infer if one
If one
or the other hand
or the other hand
held
held
a firearm
a firearm
or was used to fire a firearm.
was used to fire.
Does that prevent aggregation?
Does this allow aggregation?
It prevents inference.
No, does it allow aggregation?
It would allow you to aggregate, but does not prevent it from inference. It's
Okay.
written here, inference, to infer.
No.
It's written
So
here.
the
in the-
only place is 10.4.4,
the only place for what?
which allows you to aggregate. Is it your evidence that the sentence OGSR identified on one or both hands of a person sample means you can aggregate the results, to interpret the results of one hand using the other?
You would aggregate if you have enough information about the surface.
Is that what 10.4.4 means?
10.4.4 means that if I had prior information that these were hands, but if you're pushing me to say that if I receive swaps, I don't know where you
No,
are.
I'm not
that I
pushing
cannot
you.
aggregate, or I can aggregate. If it says that if you have prior information
Does it
that
say
these
that?
were hands, it says talks about hands. It talks about hands.
Does 10.4.4 allow you to aggregate the results from one hand
In
to another?
We have said it is allowed, that is his restriction. Whether it is right or not,
Okay.
we can't do it.
However, what we agree on, we disagree on that. I put it to your wrong. But I agree with you
Okay, good.
that you cannot infer from an OGSR result that someone held or used a firearm.
What you cannot infer if one or the other hand held the firearm.
Or was
You cannot
used.
say
Yeah,
that
you
it
cannot
is
say it was
either
this
his
hand
hand
or
or
this
the
hand.
other.
No,
Yes.
that's what
That's
it
what
says.
it
no, or was used to fire a firearm.
It means
One hand or the
or the
other,
hand.
meaning it
But I've used
could
one
be
hand.
Cannot infer if one or the other hand
Yes.
was used.
Was
So you
used.
cannot point to the
With
left
hand
or
or
to the right hand. You That is
You
what.
can't point to both actually.
Let's go slow.
Yes.
Let's read it together.
Yes, let's read it together.
Cannot be used to infer.
One or both hands. You cannot use it to infer if one or the other hand held or was used. So you cannot use it to say that it's either the right hand
Or the right hand.
That is what it says. Otherwise,
Does it mean that you can use it to say one of them fired?
My lord, isn't this a question for us lawyers to submit on? Must this witness be taken into?
Because what I'm saying, if they were saying that none, they would have mentioned that none. They would not have said one or the other. So you cannot point to the left or the right hand.
My lord, actually,
That is
my
what
lord, my understanding is it seems to be saying you can't point to any hand.
Any. That's what it's saying.
My lord, we can submit. We can submit on this.
Even if you found it on this or this, you can't infer that they held. That's what it's saying.
You cannot point at the particular
The
hand.
hand.
You cannot say it is a left or a right. You have to find it that this woman or this man held or fired a firearm. But it is difficult to say that it is this one or this one. That is what it is. That's it. Let's not add explain.
No, my lord, it is.
My lord, can I continue my cross-examination?
Yeah, I'm not requesting. my
Allow
lord.
him to continue.
Can I continue
Yes,
my
my
cross-examination?
lord, these are issues for lawyers to submit. They are not issues of evidence to clearly drag a witnesses.
Let him
And this is a
you will
science.
answer. You will
This
give
is a
an
scientific
answer
test.
which you want to give.
Don't you need to under oath?
That's the moment. You will answer,
Most of
and
them.
whether it is not your answer, you will note that he has answered. If the way he has answered is not satisfactory, you handle it yourself.
That is under oath. Are you saying that an OGSR result, you can use it to infer someone fired a firearm?
Come again.
Are you saying under oath that an OGSR result can be used to infer that someone fired a firearm?
You cannot use an AGSR to infer that someone fired a firearm, but what you can do, you associate this person to an event where a firearm was discharged.
It cannot be used to infer.
That this person shot who fired a firearm.
But they could have been in a room where a gun was discharged.
That cannot be used. What GSR cannot be used to infer that this person shot or fired a firearm, but it's become a theater. Why are you exchanging?
My lord is doing this. He's celebrating his evidence.
But
It cannot be used to point that someone fired a firearm, but it can be used to associate that someone had contact with the firearm,
Had contact with a discharge.
was in contact with the firearm,
Or
or was in an environment
where a firearm
was
was
discharged.
it can be used
To infer that someone was in contact or held a firearm,
or
was in an environment where a firearm was discharged.
my lord, can we check that?
GSR cannot be used to infer that this person shot or fired a firearm,
Yes.
but can be used to associate that person
Having held a firearm
Or
was in an environment where a firearm was discharged.
no other questions, my lord.
I think there is no, thank you, Dr. Sito. You can't start a new case.
My lord, we can't start a new witness. And my lord, we are requesting court for an adjournment until Tuesday, depending on, we can be guided by court of availability for further hearing.
All right, as you see, the court is done and it is adjourned to. The court is done and it is adjourned to Tuesday next week after Easter, and we hope everything will go on bit by bit. So we hope everything is going to move. We could give you some interviews right here, but okay, let's catch up next time as we meet again in this live interview. This is yours truly, original MC Eviat. Also, could we get some interview outside on our live coverage? Okay.